Okay, digital imaging. Today I'm going to show you guys some basic tools that you can use in Photoshop here to cut out different objects here and just go over some kind of basics of Photoshop. So I remember that Photoshop is a raster-based program. So what that means is that the program uses pixels to create its imagery, and it works a little bit different than Illustrator since we've been using Illustrator. Illustrator is more of a drawing program, and then Photoshop is more of a program for editing photos, and you can create GIFs with it and some other stuff here. So today what we're going to do is we're going to use some basic tools to cut out using Photoshop, and you'll notice that the layout is pretty much the same as in Illustrator here. Over on the left hand side you've got your tools panel. Up here at the top you've got different options that change depending on the tools that you select. You've got the same thing as before with Illustrator. You've got different places you can select things, so file, edit, image, things like that. And then over on the right hand side you've got your different panels that you can use here. You want to make sure that you're working on the same settings that I am. So just like in Illustrator, you can go into Window and go to Workspace, and then I'm working on Essentials. So you want to make sure that you're working on Essentials here. And then also remember that if you can't find some of the different panels here that you're looking for, you can always go into Window here and select those. So you also want to make sure that you've got layers opened up here so we can use that here, okay? So we'll talk more about some of the differences between Photoshop than Illustrator later on here, but one thing you want to make sure that you do with Photoshop is you want to make sure that you're putting things on separate layers here. Okay, so I've got my layers here. I'm going to have one more layer than you guys here, and that's going to be this layer here. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be using some basic tools to cut out some of these different shapes inside Photoshop, and then we're going to create this little face here. So you'll notice that in mine, all the different parts of this are all on separate layers. So that's a lot different than in Illustrator, where you could put stuff all on the same layer and you could still select things individually. With Photoshop it doesn't work that way. If you put anything on the same layer, it's going to be locked on that layer. So you want to make sure that you are putting things on different layers here, and you'll notice that I've labeled all these to kind of help myself keep them sort of all organized here. Okay, and then I've got these inside a folder just for that here. Okay, so I'm just going to close that. So right now we've got two layers. You've got this veggies layer here with all our fruits and vegetables on here, and then you've got this white background layer like that. You'll notice that when I hide this background layer by clicking on this eyeball, that you'll notice these white pixels here, this checkerboard pattern. That just means that there isn't anything there inside the document there, so that this part is there isn't any colors or anything like that inside there. So that's what that checkerboard pattern here is. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lock this background layer. So I'm just going to click on this. I've got this highlighted, so that's telling me which layer that I'm working on, and I'm going to click on this padlock here, and that's going to lock that layer like that. Okay. All right. So now we've got this layer here. A lot of the same tools do a lot of the same things. So if you want to press Control plus, you can zoom in. Control minus, you can zoom out. You can also zoom in and out with your mouse button like you did before. So if I zoom out with my trackpad and zoom in, I can do that here. So I'm just going to go back to something like this here. Okay, so some of the basic tools that we're going to be using today is we'll talk about using the Move tool and some of these other basic tools to cut things out. To cut things out inside Photoshop, there's a few different tools to do that. One tool is, well, first let me just go over using the Move tool here. So I'm going to go back to my layers. So I'm going to hide this so you can kind of see. I can use my Move tool and I can move stuff around. So all these are on the same layer. So when I move this around, these are all going to move all as one piece here. So just like in Illustrator, the Move tool moves things around. If you press Control T, you can make things bigger or smaller, or you can go up to Edit and Transform. Okay, and if I want to make this bigger, I can, or if I want to shrink this down, I can. I can hold the with Photoshop, you don't have to hold the Shift key down. It'll keep things constrained, but if you hold the Shift key down, then you can stretch and pull and move stuff here. Okay, so I'm going to press Enter and just keep that like that. And then one of the first tools that we can use here is there's the Selection tool. So just like in Illustrator, if you hold your mouse button down, you can select different shapes. There's different sub tools inside here. So I'm going to grab my elliptical tool, and I'm going to zoom in here, and we're going to cut out this let's cut out this blueberry here, and that's going to be one of the first things that we cut out. So Just like inside Illustrator, if I hold my Shift key, I can make a perfect circle. If I press Control D, that's D as in dog, I can deselect. That's the same as going up to edit and, oh, sorry, that's the same thing as going to select and deselect here. So I'm going to select this blueberry, and I'm going to do a Shift and Option, and I'm going to go from the middle out. And so I'm going to start off at the center and do that. So I can make this selection. If I want to bump my selection over a little bit, I can use my arrow key. So if I want to move this over just a little bit, I can use my left and right arrow key and go up and down. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this. So I'm going to press Control C, or that's the same as going into Edit and Copy. What I want to do now is I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to put these blueberries on this layer. So I'm going to go down here to my Layers panel. I'm going to click on this plus, and that's going to create a new layer here. So we'll see this layer 1 get created here. And I'm going to go to Edit and Paste. I'm going to paste this in here. Okay, so you'll see that when you paste it, you don't see it right away. Oh, I put it over here. Yep, there it is. So now I've got this on this layer here. So I'm going to use this for the pupils on my guy. So I'm going to make a copy of this, and I'm going to hold the Alt key. I'm going to hold Shift, and I'm just going to bring that over and do like that there. Oh, where did it go? For some reason it didn't copy it. I'm not really for sure why. Okay, so I've got 2 blueberries here, so I'm just going to call this blueberry. I'm actually going to merge these 2 layers together. So now I've got this blueberry here, and then I've got this blueberry here on this layer. I'm going to merge these. So I'm going to select both layers. I'm going to hold the Shift key and select these. I'm going to do a right click, and I'm going to go to merge layers here. So I'm going to merge those 2 layers there together like that. So now I've got 1 layer with my blueberries on there. Okay. Now I'm going to title this. If I just click once, if I double click on the text here, I can title that like that. Okay. So now I've got 1 layer, and it's got my blueberries on it. Now what I want to do is I'm going to grab a different tool, and we're actually going to select this cantaloupe, and we're going to make this into our head here. So I want to make sure that I'm working on this veggies layer here, so that, remember, that's this one here. So I'm going to grab my, let's grab our lasso tool, or let's actually grab the magnetic lasso tool. We'll use some of these other ones here in a second. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to go, and with the magnetic lasso tool, this tool works by selecting things based on their edges here. So if I click once, and I can start this selection here, you'll see that these anchor points start to appear. And what the magnetic lasso tool is doing is it's looking for the edges of the area that you selected. So I'm kind of guiding this, you'll notice, and so I'm kind of guiding it around the outside of this. If there's parts of this that kind of skip, I can go backwards here. So if I go and click back here, then I can go over here and kind of start again. Okay. So you don't need to click on this. If there is an area where you kind of need to redo it, I'm going to click, I'm just pressing once and kind of creating that anchor point. You can also click to create your anchor points, but I'm just going to kind of go around here like this. I'm just kind of tracing this edge, and you'll notice that when I go around, my cursor is just staying right along the edge of this cantaloupe. Okay. Now when I come all the way around, you'll notice that my cursor changes. See that little circle there? That means that I'm going to complete this path here. So that's what that circle means, is I'm going to complete that path. Okay. All right. So now you'll notice that once I complete that path, you have what are called marching ants. Marching ants are going to be the areas that you have selected in your selection here. So if I do Control C, I'm going to do copy. I'll do another layer here, and I'm going to do Control V and paste. And that should paste this cantaloupe on top there. Oops. Okay. So there's a couple parts that I need to kind of fix, and I can fix that later on here. What I want to do now is I'm going to layer this. I'm just going to call this cantaloupe. And I can grab my eraser tool, and this is my eraser tool over here on the left hand side here. If I hover my mouse over there, it'll show what those different tools are. So I'm just going to grab this, and the eraser tool works really similar to some of the other tools inside Illustrator. If I make my bracket keys bigger or smaller, if I use my bracket keys, I can make my circle bigger or smaller. Here at the top, you'll notice that you've got some different settings here. You've got opacity, which is how transparent the brush is. So I'm going to bring that up to 100. Flow and smoothing are both tools that kind of change the characteristics of the eraser tool. Flow and smoothing has to do with how smooth the line is, and then flow has to do with, as if, imagine like you're using a pen and the pen is kind of running out of ink. If you bring the flow down, you're going to kind of delete a little less and less of that object here. So I'm just going to go in and kind of fix this part here, and I'm not going to worry about that little part right there. Okay. So now I've got 3 layers here. I've got these 2 layers and then my veggies layer. I want to make this a little bit bigger, so I'm going to go to Edit and go to Transform, and I'm going to go to Scale here, and we're going to scale this up here. So if I zoom out, you'll see that I've got this dialog box that appears. I can make this a little bit bigger. Okay, I'm not holding the Shift key. Remember, if you hold the Shift key, it's going to stretch it. So that's kind of a new thing in Photoshop, and I'm still kind of getting used to it here. Okay, so I'm going to press Enter. Okay, now I've scaled that up, and now I can grab my blueberries. I'm going to put my blueberries on this layer here. Okay, now my blueberries are a little too far apart. So what I want to do is I'm going to select one of my blueberries. So I'm just going to grab my direct selection tool, and I'm going to select this blueberry, and I'm just going to grab my move tool, and I'm just going to move that over here. So I'm just using my arrow keys. And I could also just use my mouse to kind of move those. Okay. Now I've got this selected, so I'm going to go up to Edit and go to Deselect. Sorry, it's Image, or Select and then Deselect here, and then I can kind of move those into place there like that. I'm going to make these a little bit smaller, so I'm going to go to Edit and go to Transform again, and I'm actually going to go to Free Transform, and I'm going to just scale these guys down a little bit like that, and I'll probably have to set these, kind of space these apart again later on. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to grab our ellipse tool. We want to make sure that we're working on our veggies layer. So I'm going to select these carrots here, and this is going to be the I'm going to select these carrots here, and those are going to be the background for my carrots. So I'm going to select those. Make this a little bit bigger, and then I'm just bump it over using my arrow keys. Okay, so I'm going to go to Edit and Copy, and then I'm going to create a new layer. I can double click on my text. I'm going to call this carrots. I'm going to go to Edit and Paste. Okay, and usually that paste that right on top here. Okay, so now you'll see that I've got this carrot, and I'm trying to put this on top here, but what's happening is it's underneath my cantaloupe layer. So I need to bring this layer up. So I'm just going to click and drag and pull that layer up here, and you'll see those blue lines appear, and that's going to bring that on top here. So now I've got my cantaloupe, my carrots, and then my blueberries on my layers here. So I'm going to select my carrots. I'm going to go to Edit and Transform. You'll notice that the free transform is Control-T here, so next time I'll use that, and I'm going to shrink this down and make that just a little bit smaller there. Okay, I'm going to click on my I'm going to press Enter. I'm going to click on my blueberries and move those over. I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to select this other blueberry, and I'm just going to bump him over a little bit. I'm going to grab my move tool, and then I should be able to just move this over like that. Press Control-D to deselect, and then I'm going to go back to my carrots layer, and I'm going to hold my Option key, hold my Shift key, and I'm just going to make a copy like that. Okay. So that's the selection tool. There's also the rectangle marquee selection tool. So it works kind of the same thing. We're not going to use that for this because we don't have anything that we're like selecting based on a square. But you can select things based on a square there. So I'm going to do Control D to deselect here. One of the other tools, so we're going to go back to our lasso tool here. So we usually use the magnetic lasso tool. Let's grab the normal lasso tool and let's select a new shape here. So what's a good shape that we can use for this? So the lasso tool works a little bit different than the magnetic lasso tool. What you can do is you can select things by drawing around them. So I'm going to select this pair here. We're going to try to use that as the nose. So I'm going to click and I can draw with this. It's definitely not going to be the best tool to use for this job here. So I might actually switch to a different tool. So with the lasso tool, you can draw around something, and then same thing. When I go all the way around, I can select that. I'm actually not going to use this tool. We can use our magnetic lasso tool for this here. So I'm going to grab this again, and I want to make sure I'm working on my veggies layer, and then I'm going to click and just kind of go around the edge here. When I go to this stem, I'm just going to go across here, and I can press my mouse down. So remember with a magnetic lasso tool, you don't really need to press anything. You can usually just kind of trace it. And as long as you have an object with a clear defined edge, then that will work here. Okay. Alright, so now I can edit and go to copy. Now I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to do Control V to paste. And that's going to put that pair over here. And same thing, I need to move that layer up, so I'm going to bring that layer up. I'm going to double click on my text, and I'm just going to call this pair. And then I'm going to go to edit. I'm going to press Control T to do transform. Okay, I'm going to shrink this down, something like that. And do that. Okay. Alright, so we're going to grab another tool here. So I'm going to go back to my veggies layer. And we're going to grab the Polygon Lasso tool. And so the Polygon Lasso tool will make polygons. So if we select things, if I click once, it's kind of like the pin tool. I can go all the way around. And then same thing, you'll notice that when I complete that path, you'll see those lines that appear here. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select this, and the more anchor points or more points that I make, the smoother this is going to be. So I'm clicking and going around. The Polygon Lasso tool is going to work better on something that's a little bit more geometric and has like flat sides to it. This is more curved, but that's okay. We can use it for this. Okay. So I've got that selected. Same thing, I'm going to do Control C. I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to bring this layer above my cantaloupe layer, and I'm going to call this grapefruit. I'm going to press Control D to deselect. And then I can grab my grapefruit here. Whoops. I'm going to paste that over here like that. Whoops. I selected that wrong. Yep, there we go. Okay, and I'm just going to kind of bring that over like that. Okay, I'm going to rotate this, so I can go up to edit, and I can go back to transform, and then I'm going to go to rotate. So if I rotate this, you'll see that if I go, just like an Illustrator, if I go out towards the corners here, I can click and rotate that. Okay. Okay, next tool I'm going to grab my magic wand tool. So, well, we can use a few different tools here. Let's grab the quick selection tool. So, this quick selection tool and the magic wand tool work similar. They select things based on colors here, and there's a few different ways that you can do that. So, I'm going to grab my quick selection tool, and let's actually grab this mushroom here. So I can make this selection tool bigger or smaller here. So what I can do is I can select this mushroom. I'm going to make this mushroom into my hat. So I'm going to select this. I got to make sure I'm working on the right layer. So up here at the top, you can see that I've got a plus and a minus. I can make this bigger or smaller as long as my area has pretty well-defined boundaries and edges. It's pretty easy to select, and as long as like all the colors are pretty similar, Photoshop does a pretty good job of kind of selecting those different things here. So I don't know if you saw that, but I ran into a little bit of trouble here. So I can switch back and forth. So the plus is going to add to my selection, the minus is going to delete from my selection. I can also hold my Alt key and toggle back and forth here. So you'll notice if I hold my Alt key, I can deselect different parts from that here. So that looks pretty good. I'm going to do edit and copy and select that, and then I'll create a new layer and I'll call this mushrooms. I'm going to double click, select that, and then just type in mushroom here. Okay, I'm going to get rid of my selections. So I'm going to edit and deselect. Sorry, select and deselect. Okay, and then Control V to paste. So I'm going to bring that over here. Clicked on the wrong layer here, so I'm going to grab that. I'm going to go to Edit and Transform and Scale. I'm going to scale this up here. I can rotate this, so maybe I want to put this kind of at an angle here. Oops, I can't do that. I need to edit, transform, 3 transform. So I can rotate this here like that. Kind of scale that up. This might be a little bit too big, so I'm going to just scale this down a little bit. Okay, something like that. Okay, I'm going to bring this above my cantaloupe layer, so it'll look something like that. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select this. I'm going to grab my selection tool. I'm going to select this. I'm going to select more parts of my. Oops, I need to press Enter here. Okay, I'm going to select this cantaloupe. So I'm going to select all this here, like that, and then I want to delete this part of my mushroom here. So I'm going to click on my mushroom layer. And I'm just going to press delete, and I'm actually going to move my selection down just a little bit. So I'm going to bring that selection down like this. That's too late for that, I guess. Let me try this again here. So I'm going to select this, and I'm going to select all that. Oops, wrong layer. I'm going to select all this here. Here's what I can do actually. I'm going to press Control D. I'm going to use a different tool. But we're going to use our selection tool. So I'm just going to select just this ellipse part. So I'm going to go down something and do something kind of like this. And I'm going to go to my mushroom layer and I'm going to press delete. And I'm just going to kind of delete that part. Okay, so that part kind of hangs off like that. Alright, so that's the selection tool, and so the selection tool uses by using this brush here. So I'm going to grab my magic wand tool, and now let's grab, why don't we grab this cantaloupe here, or sorry, this pineapple here. So we're going to grab that, and I'm going to select this. So want to make sure that I'm working on the right layer here. I'm going to work on this veggies layer, so I'm going to click on this layer here. And up here with the magic wand tool, you've got a tolerance level. The tolerance has to do with the range of values that you can select in your color wheel. So if I go up to 100, that's going to select basically everything in my picture here. So I could select this, and it's going to select lots of other stuff. Actually, I thought it would. It goes all the way up to 200. So if I want to select, like this, it'll select a range of other colors inside my picture too as well. I don't want to do that. I want to bring this down. I'm going to put this down to let's just say 20 here. And I'm going to select this. So you'll notice that it's just selected parts of this. I can bring this up. Let's do maybe 40. Okay, and I just want to select most of this. I can also add to my selection. So if I hold my shift key, or I can go up here to my add selections part here, I can add that. You'll see that little plus sign. So I just want to select this whole pineapple here. Okay. Now I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go to Control C, copy. I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to press Control D to deselect my selection. And then I'm going to press Control V and paste. And that should put that right on top here. Oops. There we go. Okay. I guess I made 2 copies of pineapples. That's okay. Yeah, I'm just going to delete this one here. Okay, so now I've got this one here like that. Okay, I'm going to bring this layer above my cantaloupe layer. I'm going to press Control T. I can also just click on it, and I can scale this up here. And I'm going to use this for some glasses. So we're going to grab this, and I'm going to grab my ellipse tool, and I'm just going to select this. I'm going to do Control and Alt here. Kind of move this to kind of center it. Something like that, and then I can press delete, and that'll delete that like that. I'm just going to shrink this down a little bit, something like that, and then I'll bring this over and make a copy. Okay, like that. So the magic wand tool selects things based on color. The quick selection tool also selects things based on color, but uses more of that cursor arrow for that here. Okay. So what I want you guys to do now is use a range of different tools to select some of the different parts here for that for your veggie face. So I've kind of got mine started. Let me show you mine again. Kind of hide these other things here. So I've got this mushroom. You can start to make your ears. You can use sort of whatever shapes you want for this. You can use these. I use these green beans for glasses. I've got this. You can use different shapes for some of these different facial features too. I've got this bow tie pasta here for the for this little bow tie there, and I've got this kiwi on here like that. Okay. So play around with some of those different tools, and you can use some of those different tools to create your veggie face, and kind of play around with it, have a little bit of fun with it too when you're doing it too as well. Okay, and then one last thing we're going to do digital imaging is you're going to be using a few images from the internet to finish up your veggie face here. So I want you to use, you can use at least 5 different images from this document here, but then I also want you to add 2 to 3 different images from the internet here. So adding images to your Photoshop document is pretty easy. So right now I've got all these layers here. In the end, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another layer here. I'm going to give my veggie person kind of a beard here, so I'm just going to call this beard. And then I'm going to go look up some images here. So remember, when you're looking for images, you want to look for good high quality images, and then you also want to find images where it's going to be easy for you to cut those out of the background. So remember if you go to Tools inside Chrome, you can filter things based on the size of the image. So I would look for things that are a medium size or a large size. If you're not finding the image that you need, I would do like a medium, but large is going to be kind of the best quality that you need. I'm just going to do medium here. And then when you look for things, you can look for specific types of fruits or vegetables that you need. You can also try like kale, like if I'm looking for kale, veggies, I might try like white background to see if I can find. That actually worked a lot better than I thought it would. So if you click on an image, you can see the size. If you hover over it, you can see the size of this image. So this image is 800 pixels by 533. That's an okay size. This would work pretty well for like what it is that I'm looking for. You're also going to look for images. You want to try to find images where you don't have any watermarks. These are called watermarks, and this is where the person that owns this photo puts these watermarks in here, so that once you buy the image, it'll come without those watermarks there. So I'm actually just going to use this one real quick. This one does have a little bit of a watermark now that I look at it, but that's okay. For this example, I think it's all right. I can also kind of fix that too. When you find the image, you can copy and paste it a couple different ways. One thing I usually like to do is do a right click and go to Open Image in New Tab. And when I do that, usually that'll give me a better quality image. So I can now just do a right click, go to Copy Image. You can also do the same thing here. You can do right click and go to Copy Image, but I'm just going to keep this one here. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to Photoshop, and I'm on this beard layer here, and I can do Control V and paste that image in there, or I can do Edit and paste that image into there. Okay. Now what I can do is I could scale this if I want to scale this image here, so I can make this a little bit bigger. You don't want to go too big, otherwise it's going to get a little pixelated, and this actually looks okay. Now I'm going to just select this here. I'm going to grab my quick selection tool, and I will select this. I'm going to actually just grab my magic wand tool and use that. That'll probably work better for this. So I'm going to do kind of like a quick job here and kind of cut that out. Okay, so I'm selecting the background, double checking everything, making sure everything is deleted here. Then I'll press delete. I'm going to press Control D to deselect. Okay, and now let me move this, kind of move this out of the way here. So now if I want to put this over here, I can put this over there. I'm going to do Control T and scale this down a little bit here. I'm going to rotate this guy, and I'll make, oops, looks like I forgot something. I can delete that later on here. Okay, I can also kind of like stretch this a little bit. I can go to, let me actually just grab my eraser tool and grab that here. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. And I'm just going to erase this here. Thankfully, the eraser tool works a lot better in Photoshop than it did inside Illustrator. If I want to stretch this, there's also a couple things I can do. I can go to Edit, Transform. I can do kind of like Distort or Skew or Warp. I might actually just do Warp here. So if I clicked on that image, I can kind of click and drag and sort of stretch this by selecting some of these different anchor points on this image and just kind of like stretch that to fit, there like that. Okay, I'll make a copy of this. I can do Edit and Transform and Reflect. Whoops. Yep, image rotation. And I can do flip canvas. Gosh. Just not finding what I'm looking for here. Oh, here we go. I thought it was down there and then I couldn't see it. So I can rotate this here like that. Kind of do something, kind of like this here. I would also want to, I'm going to merge these two layers. I'm going to select both of these, go to Edit, and Merge. Remember, once I merge these, They were never gonna be unstuck here. And then I'm gonna put my grapefruit layer kind of above here on top of that, something like that. And then I'll grab like another piece like that here. Okay. All right, so that's how you find images. You want to use 2 to 3 images on your document here and find those from the internet, and then make sure you're doing a really good job cutting stuff out. And yep,